Hi, welcome to the Beyond podcast. Episode, I'm not sure what number, and we're not keeping track because there's going to be too many coming down the track. So we're not counting. We're just bringing in the best of the best and more to come. But today, I want to focus on our amazing guest, Tim Sackett, here with me. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
Joining, of course. And we're here in Chicago, Chi-Town, everybody.
I know.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes. And my first time, as I told Tim, here in Chicago, and what a beautiful city. So shout out to Chicago. Shout out to our amazing videographer, Lee, our Mothership star here, local in Chicago, and the whole city for having us here, descending on them for SHRM 2024. So here we are. Great conference so far. I've been having a great time. Tim, have you been enjoying it?
Oh, for sure. It's one of my favorite conferences of the year because I think it's when you bring 25,000 like HR people together that really want to learn, that really want to get better.
Right.
I mean, so few actually have the opportunity to develop themselves. So I always tell people, like, everyone has like, they're like, oh, like HR people are behind. And I'm like, here's 25,000 people trying to better themselves. I can always get behind that, you know?
Right, 100%. Me too, Tim.
Yeah.
Exactly. Growth, development, learning and development. I mean, I think that nothing is more important than education.
Yeah.
From the onset, ongoing, and of course in the age of AI. So this is great, and I'd love to learn that about SHRM, how much learning is involved.
For sure.
Unlike, I haven't really seen that at many other conferences. So it's great that they've really cornered the focus on that.
A lot of content. Like it's more than a lot of the conferences like that we go to where it seems like, there's the content's there, but it's maybe somewhat bought content instead of real practitioners like on stage talking about, how to make yourself better. And so it's unique. And like big, it's one of the bigger conferences in the country,
Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's massive. And what I think is so cool about the programming, I have to mention before we go into our, separate talk or the, the overall talk track. But I love that they didn't just come at it from a business perspective. I've seen a lot of wellness content, and we're very big on that here.
A lot of it, yeah.
360, they are nurturing the HR community, helping the HR community not only for themselves to operate better, to obviously stay well during these really crazy times where they've got a lot coming at them. There's a lot of change, there's a lot of impact, not just at work, but just in the world in general, right? Mm-hmm. So I love that they weave that in a big way, not in a small way. There was a lot of programming around that, I noticed.
Yeah.
So it's great to see that there's programming around the wellness side, that these big healthcare brands are even coming in to help to weave their products into benefits, for example, just giving the worker more, starting with the HR and TA leaders, and then of course that extends to all the talent and communities that they manage and that they obviously hire, etc.
Yeah, when I got into the HR space, like you didn't think about the employee as that. The employee was the employee. You hired them, you paid them, they came in, they did a service or a function for you, and then they went home. And again, if you think of like Gen X, baby boomers, like that's how they were an employee. And then you have millennials and Gen Z coming in that it's more of their whole self to work. Right. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Sometimes like don't bring everything.
Right, exactly.
But we're naive to think like that the things that they've gone through, whether that's social justice or COVID or all these other things that are happening in the world, don't have an impact. And if you want really productive employees, it's not just about how do we make them perform better, but also how do we actually help them deal with the world, right?
100%, exactly. So there's that emotional factor, the health factor, and that's, I did a whole piece on it. We actually just, I was in Bali and I came back from there and we did a whole sustainability piece on just that.
Yeah.
And like, as I say, you don't have to go to Bali to get that, right? You should be able to get that here on your home turf when you need it, accessible in any situation.
Sure.
So kudos to SHRM. Well done on that, right, Tim?
Exactly.
So thank you. And now we're going to lead into really what our talk track is about today, which is really about the past and the future of HR. And Tim is such an incredible authority to speak to this because he's seen it all, as I told him a few minutes ago, and he's been there, done that, and he's really seeing the transition. And he knows that, he knows really the HR and TA audience so well. And he really understands what they need in order to get them to feel that they can adopt these new technologies, these new processes, these new advancements and innovations. And you know, it really takes champions like you, Tim, to be able to put your arm around these great friends that you have in the industry and say, hey guys, I get you, and you know, and I'm with you, and by the way, we want to be that partner with you and everyone too, because it really is a group effort, and it's not just a matter of saying, hey, why doesn't anyone get this anymore? Just get it and come to the table. I mean, that's not the right approach. It's not fair, and it needs to be a team effort. So
For sure.
you know. So from that standpoint, I wanted to talk about essentially a brief background on Tim. So I'd love Tim to give a little bit of a background himself. And then we're going to go into the old way of work before we get to all the new good stuff. So go ahead, Tim.
I started my career in recruiting, actually, like a lot of us that fall into HR. Got my master's in HR, decided I wanted to go traditional HR. And so went down that route, but I kept getting pulled back into recruiting. And part of it is like when you're in HR, and for me it was always about the pain point of operations. So somebody in operations would be like, oh, we can't find these kinds of people or whatever. And so I would go back and forth, and people always ask me, well, what do you like, recruiting, or do you like HR? And I like both. Because one is I love being able to attract talent on the marketing side of that and what that looks like. But I also love taking care of the talent that we already have in our companies. Right. And so often that just kind of gets overlooked. So I really enjoy both. And that's why, again, coming to like a SHRM is like amazing, because you have people doing everything here. Right. And obviously people have specialized more and more over the years, but the reality is you just have so many people coming in. So started my career doing both. Started blogging probably 15 years ago when it was just like mommy bloggers and a handful of other people.
Kudos to the mommy bloggers.
And for sure. They created the industry.
Yes. Yes.
But it's interesting because you start writing on the internet, and then people find you and find the audience. And I don't necessarily believe at that time like I knew more than anybody else. Right. But that's the voice that people found, and so that turns into stuff, right? Right. And then I was always amazed by the technology, so started like really kind of doing a lot of work around that, like writing about it, talking about it. And then that turns in again where people are like, oh, it's a Gladwell's 10,000 hours concept, right? You put enough time into it and you become an expert, and get invited all over to talk about technology. Right, 100%.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned Gladwell. Somebody just mentioned it to me last night, and I love Malcolm Gladwell, and read pretty much every one of his books. So great reference, Tim.
Great storyteller.
Thank you, Malcolm, for being amazing, right? We love you. Okay, great. And it's so inspirational. So for any business, for any initiative, just for people in general, right? So now you represent mostly the tech side now and the TA side. I mean, of course, we know they're not mutually exclusive anymore.
For sure,
But do you kind of, sway one way or the other mostly, or are you really just representing both sides at all times?
Well, I mean, I run my own recruiting shop, and I think there's so much is involved with the technology of that and building your tech stack and really understanding what is, especially with like what's happening with AI right now. Right. And so I think it's really important. But like, we get back to that, like, where have we come and the history of that? Like, when I first got into HR, 25 years ago, we were constantly trying to automate. We were trying to make efficient. And like so you see different evolution of this, right? Like, you came in and there was no websites and there was paper applications and all this stuff, and the internet came, and like you're constantly trying to do anything you can to make it more efficient and better, right? And that's why we see this advent of like these big HCM, systems that were on-prem and, downloaded, and everyone had customizations. It's
like saying a perm.
Yeah. And, and so you would literally like, and then it was so painful to change because you're like, no, this software that we use for HR is on our servers,
bolted into our floors.
And to like replace it, like you would have to take that one off and put another one. And like nowadays it's so easy to kind of rip and replace, because you can kind of like let your one thing go. It's all SaaS related, so it's like, hey, we're doing this, and then on a parallel path we have our new stuff going. Once one gets up, you turn one off, turn the other on. There's just not a lot of pain to the switching, which really pressures the tech providers to say, hey, you better be really good at what you do. You better think about the end user.
Make it so
all
easy.
Of that. Yeah.
Right. And do you think that it is really easy to transition, or do you think that the tech providers really just need to, up their game there a little bit? I
actually do think it's actually fairly easy to change. I'm saying that that it's not painful in somewhat, right? Because you still have to go through contracts and changes and all that change management cycle.
And implementation.
But
right.
we also have, like, your current vendor's gonna, like, they use fear mongering, right? They're gonna scare you into like, oh my gosh, it's so much pain to change.
Right, of course.
And in reality, you know, it doesn't. I mean, in my own shop, we just changed payroll providers. And literally, it was one payroll, we were on no provider. The next payroll, we're on the new provider. There was no hiccups. There was nothing. We were able to test behind the scenes before the new one went out to make sure it worked. And we ran full payrolls just to see and make sure. Like, it just isn't that difficult anymore.
Right, you're right. But that's a great point. The vendors that you're currently with are going to make you feel that it is.
Oh, for sure.
Of course, because they want to keep your business, but you can't fall for that.
But yeah, we just don't have.
You got to go for the new. You got to try it.
And there's
something
not
new,
even,
especially if you're not, getting all the things.
Yeah, and there's not even, like, even, of course, you always want IT and legal and everything. Everyone has to get around. But if you're running one system, the other system you're going to run is probably 90% the same, right? So it's like, one would be, I always tell people, like, before you decide to change any system, like, why are you changing?
Right.
And so often it's like, well, we have low adoption of this technology. Well, that's not a technology issue. That's a you issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a post-implementation adoption issue.
And so changing necessarily isn't going to make you better.
Right.
And like, so I always say, first become a super user of the tech you have, and then come and tell me, like, what you don't have and what you need. Because so often the tech you have already has that. You just didn't know, or you didn't implement it the right way to do that.
Right.
And so, before I, like, encourage anybody to change, I'm like, just be a super user,
Right, but you know what, because we take that very seriously here at Mothership, and we really teach people how to drive the ship.
Yeah.
Right, because it's got a lot of controls.
Yeah.
And it's a very high quality, high speed ship.
Yeah.
So I think that it is a little bit on the tech providers to at least have certain amount of training. Like, my team knows it's usually a 6 month to a year, that we offer that, because we know that that's really the amount of time. It's easy, you turn it on, you can use everything, but to really get the full utilization, to know exactly where all the buttons are, and to really know which to press and when, we do get involved there and help them with that. Do you think that's important, Tim?
I think it's hugely important. I think we tend to, as tech providers, sometimes we believe that the end user, the buyer, is more sophisticated than what they really are. And what I find is that and I'm not saying that they're like lower level or naive. They're very functional experts, right, in what they do. But your technology is very new to them, and so we have to put so much time and effort into really and sometimes they don't want to move fast, but then they miss things, and so it's like, how are we coming back and checking and all of that? I think at the end of the day, it's all about not only their adoption, but the more they're adopting you, the longer they're going to stay on with you, the stickier you become as a tech provider, right?
Right, and the support piece.
Yeah.
Everybody, loves support, they need support, but not everybody offers support. And, I always joke around, because I was thrown in the deep end at 11 months old to swim.
Yeah.
And I did. I popped up like a cork, and I learned how to swim, and I wonder why. That's how I get to do the job I do today, Tim. But, I don't expect that of everybody. And I don't even know that it should have been expected of me at 11 months, but it was, it's what I got.
Yeah, hopefully if you didn't pop up like a cork, somebody was jumping in to help you. Right?
Exactly, hopefully, it would have been nice. My mom had 6, so she was probably like, she had a few to spare, but thank God she cares about all of us the same, But yes, exactly. So great analogy for just, not throwing our clients into the deep end, so to speak, and just giving them the support and giving them those additional guardrails and, things to lean on.
Yeah.
Right.
And most of the time what I find too is, like, the end users, the buyer, they don't really know the questions to ask.
Right.
And if you're not telling them, and I'm always like, I just dig in a lot because of my background, and like, I want to know who your super users are. I want to know who uses you the best. I want to know who uses you in ways you never even thought yourself they would use you, right? Because that's really the strength of what you bring. And so often we just aren't going and telling them to say, hey, we have a group of super users. We have some people that use us amazingly. How can we get you there and let us show you the stuff that they're doing?
Right.
100%.
So they're like a super user influencer
for sure
group, right? That can just be essentially that core training group that can essentially transfer their knowledge to everybody else.
Yes.
Which we love. And that's a great upskilling opportunity, which we love too, right?
Definitely.
So That's great, Tim. Thanks. So tell us a little bit more about your recruiting firm before we go into the rest. I want to make sure that we know exactly what you do, and perhaps there's opportunities that the audience and you could enjoy
Definitely.
together. Yeah.
It's hrutech.com. My mother started the company 45 years ago. I tell people she built an ATM machine. It's been profitable for 45 years. And it's hard to find any company that can be profitable for, 45 straight years, right? Has never lost money.
Wow.
So when she asked me to come take it over about 15 years ago, and I've owned it the last 5 years outright, I could only mess that up. Like it was like I could only do worse. And
No,
so
you couldn't.
thankfully,
You couldn't.
she kind of built a really great model that kind of scales up and down with
And
the
a really
economy,
great
and,
son.
and yeah, hopefully taught me a few things.
Yes.
But it's mostly technical contracting. But like I always tell my people, like I teach my recruiters to recruit. They know how to recruit, whether that is healthcare, technical, manufacturing. It could be anything.
Right.
And I would put my team up, and I would, in a very short period of time, they would be functionally really good at being able to recruit whatever that is. So I have no concern. And it's funny, like, the Liam Neeson movie Taken,
Yes.
where he has that line where he's like, I have a certain set of skills, and, he's talking to the bad guy. And when I hire new recruiters, I tend to hire recruiters that don't have any recruiting background. And I tell these people, like, look, I'm going to teach you a set of skills that you can use across all industries, anywhere in the world. You're going to know how to recruit. Now, you might not like it. You might not be good at it.
Right.
But we're going to teach you these skills.
Right.
And you'll be able to do anything with this. Now, I think I'm
Right.
going to deliver you great pay, great environment, everything, right?
Right.
So that you won't want to leave. But
Right.
regardless, if you decide to come here, you're going to leave with something, right? That's very valuable.
Right,
So.
and I love that, Tim. So we might have to do like a skilling course together for recruiters if you're up for it, because I think that you could charge that as a service to everyone out
Yeah.
there that
Or just keep it for myself
Or
and
just-
be
and
really
just-
good at my company.
right, and just have a much bigger ATM, exactly, which is a lot better, right? But the thing is, we do it as a service for other things,
For sure,
right? So we
yeah.
do it where we'll help to, anyone can consult with us and have us come in as a consultancy
Yeah.
to help them make their workforce essentially bigger, better,
For sure.
and to learn new skills,
Yes.
right? But of course, not to learn things that you're giving away that are obviously part of your bread and butter and proprietary to you. Better to
Oh,
keep.
yeah.
Yes.
But I still, I was today, right, I'm at SHRM and we're speaking, and we were talking about building this high volume machine, right?
Right,
of
this
for
high volume hiring machine, which is what we're really
And-
discussing today.
And
Yes.
like, my mother, when she first saw me give a talk like that 12 years ago, whatever it was, right, at some SHRM conference, she wanted me to stop talking. She wanted me to stop telling people how to do it. She's like, you're giving away the secret sauce.
Right.
But the real secret was, I will tell you exactly what you need to do, but you're going to hire me to help you do it because you don't trust that you can do it yourself, right? You want to
Right.
hire an expert to come in, help you
Right.
with those kinds of things.
Right.
And again, I'm not like leaving something out. I'm going to tell you exactly, you should go do this.
Right.
And I encourage people to do this, and
Right.
ask me questions and buy the book and do all this stuff.
Right.
Like I've given you everything to go do this.
Right.
And yet they still come and go, can you help us do
100%.
this?
Well, that's the thing. That's a great point. And so just to digress for a second to make sure, Tim, well, let me finish this point
Yeah.
and then we'll come back. But that's a great point because I've seen this a lot in my career and overall, right? And so there's a few things here. First of all, we have a great construct for you to sell that in, so you don't not lose anything. But at the same time, not everybody, even if they learn it, can do it or wants to do it. Or let's talk about the real, kahuna, which is time.
Yeah.
There's just that, there's only
Time
so
and
much time and
capacity,
capacity
yeah.
in the day. So to me, it's like, there's a lot of times in business where people have said, oh, well, I could do that myself. And I'm like, okay, well, knock yourself out because you've got 10,000 other things to do
Yeah.
that are more pertinent to your business, that are more important, or that you would be better served doing, or maybe that you're just better at because you've got more experience. And so, and if you want to do it yourself, that's great too,
Yep.
but it's not necessarily the best use of their time, right? They might be better off putting their time towards something where
And
they've got a more honed skill set
For sure.
than something like that, but that they can easily outsource, especially if it's not a major cost to do so, and it doesn't really come, it doesn't come with the price that the time
Yeah.
comes with.
And there's a little bit of organizational dynamics as well. Like if you're in a really political organization, you put yourself at risk by going out and doing major change.
Right.
But so you see this in a lot, especially at enterprise where they're bringing in consultants constantly, because you can always then go blame the consultant if something fails and it's not on you necessarily. I mean, it might be on you that you chose that consultant, but it's not necessarily you owning, there's a lot of like real fear to that. I'm very conservative with people's careers. Like I never want anybody to get fired for trying something new.
Right.
But I see a lot of people get fired for not doing something new.
Such a great point, Tim. So this is where I think we could really dive into the conversation. And Tim has just been, he just spoke at SHRM today. Unfortunately, I missed it, but I can't wait to catch it on the recordings. There's recordings, right? So look forward to that. But essentially, Tim's topic was how to build a
high volume hiring machine.
Right. A high volume hiring machine, right? And so this is the why that is, underpinning the change management and all the things we're talking about, right? It's efficient, it's easy, it's click of a button. I mean, we call it Uberized hiring, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Because it's something people understand, right?
Yep.
And that's what our platform is set to do. It's really this few click experience, and bam, you've got it. And it's the connection piece that makes all of that possible. There's a lot that makes it all possible. But so where are you seeing, there's the old ways of work that we just went into. Where are you seeing that, this is an adoption issue and a pain point that people need? I'm sure you spoke about it in the presentation, but first of all, why do we need it, Tim? And then, yes, people are afraid, and how do we get around the fear factor so that everybody can reap the rewards and then be the hero in the organization versus, like you said, the, just kind of analysis by paralysis, or obviously the fear, just holding everyone back, and then who knows that might eventually be the thing that actually is the issue and could cost someone their job.
Yeah, the why for me is twofold. First off is we don't have enough people to do the work we have. Now we might say, hey, what about AI is coming, blah, blah, blah. It is, but that AI, that's little by little. It's not like tomorrow the light switch comes on and everyone's job goes away or all the work goes away. With every technological revolution, we actually see a net plus jobs after everyone, right? So we don't know what those jobs are yet. We never did. Right. When the steam engine came, we didn't know what those jobs would be. And when the internet came, we didn't know what those jobs would be, right? So, and we don't know what those jobs will look like with AI, but we know there will be a net positive job based on history. What we foresee though is like in rich countries, so US, Japan, Australia, China, the UK, we don't have enough humans. We're not making enough babies. We have this negative birth rate, and it's going to hit all of us. So we have to get better at hiring because talent's going to be more scarce. And we also are terrible at immigration, right? In the U.S., maybe other countries are ahead of us in some of that stuff, but in the U.S. we suck. And so then you also go, we have this old paradigm that continues to kind of go forward in the HR speak, of which I'm going to build a process and a technology solution that works for me, not for the candidate.
Ooh, and I'm not a fan of that.
And so it
has to work for both sides. It's a marriage.
So in my high volume hiring machine, it's really all about ease of the candidate. It's how do we stop asking candidates for every piece of information we've ever wanted out of them the moment they meet us, kind of thing, right?
Right.
How do we nurture them like a marketing nurturer, where all I need is your name and a piece of information that I can get back with you, and let's start dating a little bit. Let's start to get to know each other a little bit.
Right.
And little by little, I'll get the information I need. I'm not going to say don't be compliant. We're still going to be 100% compliant. I'm going to get every T crossed, every I dotted, but I don't need to do it the moment we meet. It would be like me walking in the door today and going, will you marry me? I think it's true fate because we just met. And you'd be like, you're a crazy person. But we do this to candidates every single day,
Really? So I am gonna challenge a little bit of that.
Do it, yeah.
Because we do that. But the next build, we are, phasing it out in stages, right? But the thing is, if you don't do it, if you don't do it up front, because to me, we have a credentialing module, right? So first thing as we meet someone, to your point, we ask them for all this information.
But that's an opt-in process that's different, right? You have talent coming to you.
It's not mandatory. It's an option. They can give us a little bit of information and stay off the grid.
Yes.
Or they can get on the grid where they're discoverable globally.
And they want to be discovered, so they want to give this information. And what I'm saying is, like, for this is saying, we have candidates who are trying to opt in, and we're asking for so much information that they're going, this is just too much time. And we see this actually in conversion, right? Most of the people, when you say, okay, who comes to your career site? Do you even know? They don't even know. I mean, that's the vast majority still don't know.
Right.
And then you go, okay, well, how many of those then that you don't know turn into an applicant? And they would guess 50, 60, 70%, when in reality it's under 5%. And so I keep telling people, we don't need more applicants. You need to convert more of this traffic that's coming to your career site. And you do that by, again, letting them little by little figure this out and get used to you and understand, do I want to come work here? Do I want this job? Instead of like, the moment they see you, you go, okay, create this profile and do all this and do all this. And the data shows. At the moment you ask them to create a profile, 68% of them immediately go bye. And they just leave and they never come back.
Right.
And so we have to figure out what's a better candidate-friendly way to still get every piece of information we need, but by like spoon feeding, right? Like little by little and nurturing them back.
Right, and so this is really interesting, and I'm about to like throw my phone out the window because me and Tim can just like, you know, we could just go off the cuff, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, I love it. But the thing is that, so there's two fear factors, and there's two adopters here, right? There's the client adopter. They're afraid because of the reasons mentioned, right?
Sure.
Because of fear of, you know, being wrong, a fear of bringing in the wrong consultant, fear of it's new and it's different, and they don't know how it's going to work. You know, it's not the old thing that they know is reliable, but not made for the future.
Yeah.
You know, so we have to address that. And then there's the talent fear factor. First of all, do I want to give up my data and be usurped by AI, which we're going to get to at the end, and that's never going to happen, and we're going to tell you why. So you don't have to ever worry about that, because you're actually the most important person in the room, not the AI. And at the same time, to your point, asking for too much information, but from where we sit, because we have this credentialing module that is really a universal resume, digital resume, that they can use anyway. They can use it with your firm, they can use it with our firm, they can use it with any firm. So the point is, if we get people to do it just once, and through this very easy user interface that we've created, so it's this very easy process to get it done, and they only do it once, and they can use it with every shop and every client, and they don't ever have to do it again. Somewhat like a resume, but with a lot more very essential data points that we don't have to get out of them in such a long, lengthy process. We have ways of getting them seamlessly with the click of a button and very easily.
It's kind of the blockchain of chainish kind of profile, and you're starting to see more companies trying to figure out, is this something that we could do, right? And not just for like skilled workers, but I'm talking like even like hourly workers. Like if you're an hourly worker who's working at a McDonald's and you want to go then work at a Burger King, like why are we asking them for? Why do you got to
tell Burger King who you are again? You just told McDonald's. Like,
and like these systems have all this data, right? So if you own your own data, why can't I just say, hey, here's who I am, here's my QR code, and you have everything?
Well, you can now. Too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, you can. It's hard to do that everywhere, you know, from a system standpoint.
Right. Exactly. So the system we built, the module we built, can plug into any system, and it goes with the worker. So the workers, you can own, this is your digital resume.
Yeah.
And you own it. And the beauty of it is because it's digital, it can plug into everyone's systems. It can be something that their system can speak to and find you without you having to send this manual piece of paper through the web.
Or fill out a form.
Or fill out a
online,
form, right. And it connects you to a grid. It connects you to a expert system that makes you discoverable without even sometimes having to apply to a job. Tim, how's that?
Yeah.
I mean, people can just search and find you, like Google.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and eventually AI will be like putting those people up to when jobs are, you know, open, and automatically you're going to say, hey, here's profiles you should be speaking with, right? I think to me, when we take a look at this AI transformation that's taking place, I always go back to every step along the way in the history of HR, TA, whatever it might be, as we looked at automation to kind of make us better.
Right.
To me, this is the next evolution of that, where I say, okay, well, if I'm a recruiter or if I'm a TA expert, what would I do if I had all this capacity and time? And it would be actually being able to have real conversations with the real people. Right. And I don't need to, or I don't want to do every little, you know, working with 3 different calendars and setting up interviews and doing all this tactical stuff. AI is going to be better at that than we are, and we should let that happen. What I want to do is like, do I know the best talent in my marketplace, and am I creating this pipeline where I go, hey, Mark over there I'm not ready to hire him yet, but I'm in a year I want, and by the way, I want that relationship to be so strong that when I say, hey, call him up and say, we're ready for you, he comes, right?
Right, and let's talk about that relationship.
Yes.
Because it's so important, and there's other ways to build the relationship. And so 100% you need the relationship, you need the operational efficiency, make it really easy for him.
Yep.
And so a few things there. First of all, when you do that, you are maximizing the talent acquisition cost of the data that you acquired. So when you put up a job post and you're paying, all the job boards for it, and then, all the data comes into your system, and your team's taking a look, and they're saying, look, Bob, John, and Sarah are great for the job, and and this additional person is not available, or maybe not the best fit. Now that data just gets literally thrown in the garbage, for lack of a better term. Maybe it's kept in an ATS, but it's not a shoppable ATS, as we know we spoke about with our friend Kyle. But the point is that is what I call dollars dropped on the floor, right? And we never do that at Mothership. Anyone that comes through our application process, we have them go through our credentialing process so that we don't have to find them again.
Yeah.
We paid to find you once. We don't want to have to pay again, right? We want to make sure that you're there. And there's not just about hiring, to your point. This is a relationship. So to us, if people are coming into our platform, once they credential, they get gold status with Delta. They get access to all our partners and our benefits and our ecosphere.
For sure.
So now they're a supported worker, not just from being placed. So it's not just transactional anymore. The tech and the platform actually manages them 360, mobility, learning and development, support, all the other things that are the relationship builders, that are the sticky factor, to your point, Tim, of why they want to be with you and stay with you and your firm, and why they feel that you and your firm are the best to represent them.
Yep.
And so this is really what I call community management. And it starts, as you said, as you meet them, and then it's an ongoing process as you know them and get to know them, and even for all the years you know them, they would be part of this process. But to have a system to manage that and to support you and your team to do that, have you seen that? Do you think that's important?
I do. I mean, and I think that what we don't know yet is what we don't know.
Right.
And that's the AI thing, right? It's moving so fast. We want to, in the way that we all talk about it, we want to probably move way faster than it actually is. Right. And so we're going to, I always tell people it's the frog in the pot scenario, right? If you put a frog in a boiling pot, it immediately jumps out. But if you put a frog in a cool pot of water and you heat it 1 degree an hour, it'll never jump out and it'll boil itself alive. That's AI. We're not going to know. We're not going to realize, because it's going to be feature and little feature and little feature and little feature and little feature. And one day we'll wake up and we'll be doing work completely different. But it's not going to happen automatically.
It's not a switch.
And I know people obviously are afraid from the ethics standpoint of what's going on with AI. Right. I always tell people I'm less afraid of the algorithm being biased than I am Todd, the hiring manager. I know Todd's biased. I can't measure it. 100%. I can immediately measure 100%. The algorithm and understand in the moment what's going on 100%. And where that bias is coming from. And then also, though, I can also train and catch for that bias. 100%. And so I take a look at AI going, the closest we'll ever come to bias-free hiring is by using the technology. Because 100%. We already know as humans, we have both conscious and unconscious bias.
100%.
And
Malcolm
we don't even know,
spoke about that
we don't
too,
even
Malcolm,
know
you.
Most of that we have. So
Yes.
I'm very hopeful for the future of AI for recruiting, because I do think we can get closer to bias-free hiring. I don't think we'll ever get completely there. And I think we obviously there's data things to be concerned about. I think we're doing the right things there. I think the best tech on the market right now is building private language models that are trained specifically for the function, right?
We have that.
And then also another language model that's actually checking the first one, almost like a cop or a mom or something, going, wait a minute, are we sure?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's their only job. And that's I tell people it's not like robots running around. These are all software programs.
Right.
And they can only do what we tell them to do.
Right.
It can't just decide, I'm going to go do something else. I was designed to be a recruiting software, and now I'm going to turn on lights. You can't do that. It's just,
right. And even if it could, is it such a big deal? Or is it that it's okay?
Yeah, I don't want my software doing anything. It can't. It has a mind of its own, but it's different than that. But
right. And people are concerned about that. I mean, someone did say to me the other day that they were dealing with one of the big institutions, educational institutions, and they said, "Oh, we don't need to regulate our AI and teach it how to be unbiased. It's going to teach itself."
Yes.
So there is some concern about it having its own intelligence and being able to do other things and learn other things without our control.
We're also naive to think that we can train people or technology better than technology can train itself. If I design a technology specifically designed to be bias-free training, hiring, right? In the technology will never question what I'm teaching it. It will go word for word, this is what I have to do. Humans question that. Humans decide, do I think that's important or not?
Right.
Software can't do that. It's just incapable, right? And so if I actually make a technology that says I'm going to make the perfect bias-free hiring person that can understand all of this context, well, oh crap! But we don't. But we're just naive because we haven't seen that or we can't think of it.
Right.
But like the technologists are thinking of this, right? They're like, wait a minute, can we get there? So
right.
Again,
exactly.
I get back to it, like I'm really hopeful for the future of it.
Right, me too, Tim. And that's where we talk about some advanced AI that we'll get to. So a few more quick things, right, is that, once we're going into AI, we've talked about, where it started happening, the HR and recruiting advancements. And so, Tim talked about how it was pre-COVID and during COVID, we've seen these big leaps. And, and then, of course, on the back of that, the birth of AI. And then, of course, here we are talking about a little bit of what the progress of AI means in the future of work. So, and then, we've already jumped to, can it be ethical and all of that. But like on the progression of AI in the future of work, Tim, what do you, how do you see the progression of AI shaping the future of work? I mean, do you see it as being more assistive? Do you see it as, general? Because at Mothership, the expert system we're building is building ethical and biased and advanced AI, right? This is high intelligence. This is deep data that we're, really interested in, because without the clean and deep data, you're not really going to get those easy results with a click of a button, right? So what do you think about where is AI really going to be utilized as far as the future of work? Is it going to be assistive? Do you think it'll be advanced enough to really take anyone's jobs, or do you think
it's going to take work? There's no doubt about that. I mean, we're naive to think it's not going to take work. It's already taking work.
Right.
It's going to be assistive. It's going to be layered into the systems and processes that we already use, right? Like I said, it's going to happen so slowly that you don't realize. You'll adjust, right? You'll all of a sudden one day you'll go, oh wait, this little feature, this is so cool. Gosh, it saves me so much time.
Right.
And we'll fill that time with something new.
Right.
And hopefully more valuable, right?
Right.
And so, but like over time, all of a sudden you'll look back and go, gosh, in 3 years, what I do for my job now is completely different than what I did 3 years ago, because it's little by little, feature by feature, it changes the way we work. And that's why we say, like, is it going to take jobs? Is it going to take work? It is, but also it's hard for us to see that or notice that, because it's not like we're taking 1 million jobs tomorrow because we turned on ChatGPT. Like that it didn't happen that way, and it won't happen that way.
Right, there's a lot of intricacy.
And there's other thing, again, that will be created because now I have this time to do something else, and we have, now all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I never even thought about, that I could have, a massive performance coaching, practice in my company, so that we can make
a revenue stream for you guys.
You just
all
don't
of us,
like, you just don't know, right? And so that's, to me, is like becomes the big thing.
Right, is that honestly what you're saying is that it's actually going to open up more, it's going to provide more income, more opportunity for everybody, and that's ultimately what we're saying here. So what we wanted to talk about at the end is really to discuss that, and just one more question for you, Tim, before we get there is, really to get everybody to put their fears aside, right? The talent to put their fears aside, the client to put their fears aside. What is the ultimate message that you have for everybody? Like, is it just Nike, just do it? Because I'm down for that. That's how I feel about it. But of course, as we said, it's not that simple, and I'm sensitive to that, and I understand that. So tell me, like, before we get to our little,
I think you have to really educate yourself, and put yourself out there in terms of really understanding what this is and isn't. I think most people don't, so it's easy to be fearful of it. It's easy to balk at it, it's not use it. And when you start to really dig in, you realize this is just, again, this next level of automation and usage and technology that's going to come into our work. And it's not just HR or TA, it's every single function that we do. So like as an individual, you have to start educating yourself around it. And I educate myself by doing demos and really asking questions and digging in to figure out like where is this built on? And when we talk about like the AI stuff, if they can't talk to me about it and tell me what it's doing in a real layman's way,
Right.
then I don't think they really understand it, because
Right.
we try to make like this AI like we become overly sophisticated about it.
Right.
When in reality, it's just not that difficult to tell somebody how this is working. Now, is it
Right.
sophisticated technology? Massively,
Right,
but
of course.
you should be able to explain it. And
Right.
what I say is there's so many vendors right now that can't even explain it, and they're like their AI's in a black box, and you're like, then I'm not interested in working with you.
100%. And
Yeah.
so I think to simplify that, the way I explain it is it's about connecting information, connecting data is where I think AI starts. And that's why we start with the credentialing clean data piece first and foremost, because if you don't have clean data, you just can't get there. So to me, it's all about connection. And it goes beyond just data point connection. Then it's human connection. Then it's connection of systems. I mean, it's just connection. But like AI to me is about connecting data, connecting enough data points together that it starts to create something that is real world and that is matter. So it's really how matter is formed if you think about it, right? And you have these atoms that come together to form matter. And so you have data that comes together to form people, honestly, Tim, and then those people are also becoming digital resources as well, because those digital resources are really just data points that are able to deliver a deliverable or an output because they're able to connect enough information to do that, which is exactly what our brains do with our synapses and how we connect in order to deliver. So I look at it as connection, synapses of information, of data, and really that's just all everybody needs to do now, in my mind, is just to take your data that's sitting in an Excel or sitting somewhere that's disconnected and put it into something that is part of an expert system or part of a technology that connects it so that it can speak to everything else and it can do a lot more than it does as just in one's brain, right? To connect with another person's brain. It actually connects all of the intelligence with each other. I know that sounded a lot more complicated, but I hope there was something simple in there that someone could gravitate towards, where we could just start with the information, the data, get it into something that is transformed and that is connected, if you agree, Tim?
Yeah, I go back to just demo more.
Demo more, take it for a test drive. We will talk about separately why AI is not taking your job, because you are the consumer, and we'll get back to that in a separate segment. Tim, such a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate it.
Sorry to keep you so long, and we'll see you next time.
All right, awesome.
Ciao.